I wanted to walk you through how I processed the kick and bass on a track that I recently mixed for an artist, because I know that low end was something that I definitely struggled with as a producer. The track is called Be the One by Bishop, and this is what it sounds like.
Be the one for you. I know that you only want someone, homie, you know I could.
Right, it's a cool like melodic tech house style track, and we're going to be taking a look at three things specifically: the bass tone, the phase relationship between the kick and bass, and lastly, just the overall levels. This is what the kick and the bass sound like before any processing. We've got a punchy kick, we've got a rolling bass line. These two things are really important elements in this style of a track, right? It's going to be giving the song a lot of its energy. The other thing that I have queued up is a reference track by John Summit called Fade Out, and this is going to anchor a lot of our decision making. So I'll play a really short clip of that. The first thing that I notice when I play this bass compared to the John Summit track is that it has a lot more of that low end rumble sub information and a lot less of that mid-range and kind of low mid-range presence where you can really hear the bass and you can hear its movement and jumping notes and that type of thing. Let's try and get it a little bit closer tonally to the reference. I just used a couple of different EQs. I took out some of the low end rumble. I added a boost just over 300 hertz to give it that low mid-range, and then 3 dB around 1600 hertz to give it again more of that presence in the mid-range. I felt it could use a little bit more sculpting after that. I'm taking out more sub information, and then I wanted to add presence above 400 hertz. I have this really broad shelf. I'm taking out a little bit around 220 hertz because it just clashed with the vocal a little bit. So again, this is before processing, and then I'll switch to after. The next thing that I wanted to check was the phase relationship between the kick and the bass. It was already lined up pretty nicely, but I moved it over a tiny bit so that it was even more in phase. When I say a small amount, I mean I turned the grid off and I moved it fractions of a millisecond, because any more than that, the groove would start to sound off. I just pulled up the oscilloscope in Shaper Box. You know, we can see that the waveforms are in phase with each other. They're going up at the same time, they're going down at the same time, and that's going to give us that really powerful low end that we're looking for. If one of the waveforms was going up while the other one was going down, the waveforms are going to start canceling each other out in that low, and it's going to sound terrible. So these ones look good. The last thing that I want to check is the overall level in relation to the rest of the mix. So to do that, I have two go-to plugins which I usually use. One is this AB plugin, which just allows me to go back and forth between my mix and a reference track. Importantly, this plugin will actually gain match our mix and the reference, so we can really compare them accurately. And I want to try and get the kick and the bass as close as I can by ear to our reference, which I've done. The next thing that I like to pull up is this analyzer, which really gives me a detailed account of what's happening in our low end. I'll play the reference track really quickly, and let's take a look at the kick and bass levels. All right, so this is the kick right here. It's starting in green, and then as it, goes down in pitch, we have the sub information here, which is like the, that sub punch of the kick around 60 hertz. But the important thing is kick is kind of outlined in green, and then it has a little bit more energy in this yellow and orange area in the sub frequency range. Right after it highlighted in green is the sub, or like the bass information. So this allows us to look at how loud the kick is in relation to the bass on like a professionally mixed and mastered track. Now let's flip back to ours and see what our levels are looking like. It's looking pretty similar, right? We have our kick here. It looks like it has a little bit more punch in the sub area. With this track specifically was an artistic choice by Bishop. And then after that, we have the bass outlined in green here. So, if we flip back and forth, we know that when these are volume matched, which this plugin is doing for us, we have roughly the same level relationship between our kick and our bass. So I hope this helps.